What's up, guys? Sharky here. I do apologize for taking so long to get the full build video out. I did have a little bit of a health issue with a pinched nerve in my neck affecting my mouse arm. But it is getting better, so here we are with the full build guide for the Thorns Spriggan, or Damage Reflected as this game puts it. We're going to be going through piece by piece on how to deal the damage, what skills you need, what passives are going to help. And first I'll start off by fully explaining what Damage Reflected is. There are two types of Thorns damage, or Damage Reflected, in this game. They are damage reflected to attackers and damage reflected. Damage reflected is a percent-based reflection back to your attacker. Example being on this right here, you can see 100% of damage reflected. What that means is any damage an enemy does to me is going to get reflected back to them. It is probably one of the best abilities because it infinitely scales. And by that, however hard they hit you, you're going to hit them. And that being said, there's also damage to attackers, which ignores armor and any defenses that they have. So it says here only 182 damage reflected back to attackers, but with that ignores everything. So it's a flat damage increase. You can check yours by going into defense and checking these two. So you can see I have 6,000 damage dealt to attackers just standing here, and the damage reflected is 148%. So pretty much 150%. So if something hits me for 1,000, it's going to hit them for almost 1,500. So as you can see, I am in actually a 100 corruption, and things are literally hitting me and exploding. I wish I could say there's more buttons to push, but once you're in Spriggan form, you're only pushing two. You're pushing Summon Vines, which teleport you with some new things that I have found, and you're casting Thorn Shield. Remember, your main damage is coming from things hitting you and your vines. Vines more so for single target, because they're going to rack up poison stacks on all the enemies. And with 12 of them out, you can very, very easily get up to 300 stacks of poison. So we'll finish this off with a little bit of a showcase on what this can do. Looks like we're going to be heading towards a storm gate. Oh, look at that, 300% damage reflection. Very nice. And it works for dots as well. If you have a dot on you, it's going to tick them for the damage attacked as well. This is by far not a hardcore build, but it could be made into a hardcore build. Because as we're casting our Thorn Shield, you can see our armor is also multiplicative in the fact that we're getting more. We're at 14,000, 16, 17,000 armor. And I don't have the best gear. None of it's been slammed. It's all gear that I've found. Oh, another thing your vines are going to do is they replenish your rage like crazy. As you can see there, did that one. And it's done. So that's the basic overview of what damage reflected is. Next, we're going to be going over the essential gear that you do need. So looking at the gear, you can see I do have a lot of uniques on, but only 2, I would say. 3, if you can find them, are absolutely necessary to get into dealing Thorns damage. The most important is Thorn Shell. If you have this, you're going to stack attunement. The amount that you get for that 8% increased flat damage per attunement doesn't seem like a lot, but it is. So we can see here, I take it off, it is 818 is what I deal. I put that back on, it goes up to 6,000. So it is essential to have Thorn Shell. The next one I would suggest is the Tears of the Forest unique amulet, as it works for everything that we are doing. 1 to summon Spriggan, which we'll get into when we start talking about the skills. Spriggan form, we use that as well. The 2 rage gained per second per summoned vine is the cat's ass. You can have up to 12, so that is 24 rage gained per second. And our Thorn Shield, I believe, ends up costing us... That doesn't say. Let's check here real quick. It costs us about 10. So you can do the math. You have 24 rage per second. You're only using 10 to 20 rage a second when you're casting your Thorn Shield, dependent on your cast speed. That is all you need. Legacy of the Quiet Forest, you don't need it, but it helps. That extra 17 rage gained every 3 seconds gives you that extra boost if you have more cast speed. Because every 3 seconds you are going to get 24, you're going to get 41 every 3 seconds. So you'll get 24, 24, 41. And so on and so forth. This can actually roll up to 20, but I find 17 was enough to keep me in Spriggan form before I had Tears of the Forest. This is just incredible. Valdir's Chalice, 100% of damage reflected. That is all that can roll on this. And that is the only reason you are taking this, is for the 100% of the damage reflected. Now again, you take the damage that you reflect, always. So your resistances are priority. Health is there, but not that big of a deal, because we're always going to be healing, and I'll get into that with the skills. But that is huge as well. That is what infinitely scales within the game. If a boss hits you for say 1,000 again, you're going to be hitting for 1,480, according to my stats. Plus the 6,000. So just standing here with no buffs, I am going to be hitting something that hits me for 1,000. I'm going to be hitting it back for 8,000. Now, it is unknown because it does not show numbers if Thorns can crit. So I have no idea if it can crit, and I'm not sure whether or not it scales inside of everything. So if you add physical to it, is that a hidden mechanic that scales it to deal more damage? Don't know, because numbers aren't shown. The next thing you're going to want to get is obviously any gear with attunement. Oak armor. So chest armor and shields are the only things that you can put damage reflect on as body armor and shield. And where is it? Damage reflected to attackers. It can only be on when it comes to prefixes or any affix, can only be applied to body and shield. Your shield is already taken up, but on your body you can find it. This is only T6 to 195. I have yet to see a T7. Probably incredible. Excuse me. But those, again, are the only two things that you can find them on. Which is why I believe it's not vastly used as a mechanic in this game. But anything for attunement to scale up your increased flat damage reflected from your shield. You want it on everything. The next piece I would go for is Silva Frond, the ring. If you can get this, it allows you to cast 6 vines at once, and it also gives you a teleport while you're in Spriggan form. The only caveat that it has is that it is now a 7-second cooldown instead of no cooldown. But that doesn't matter. We have the Tongue of the Aberrant Seer. It requires level 6, and this can actually get you started into a Thorns build. Gives you 13% of damage reflected. 3 to all your attributes, and that's what you want. Right there, 13% damage reflected, and you'll be killing stuff. You can also run this right here, Thornslinger at level 12. This gives you your first taste at damage reflected to attackers. That is the one, again, that ignores armor. So keep that in mind. It also has a chance to bleed on hit. I have been messing around, and I just got this yesterday. 13% chance to cast Thorn Shield on yourself when you directly use a physical skill. Our Thorn Shield is a physical skill. So now we are stacking up more and more, which gives us more and more thorns. The head, preferably summon Spriggan. Doesn't need to be there. Just the 8 attunement. Only reason I'm wearing these is for the minion damage of my vines. And the 3 to all attributes. It can roll up to 5. Idols don't matter. When I first started this build, I ran with, I think it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 idol slots. And I went into Empowered. I'm just recently doing these. We have a few blessings. I went for resistance on a lot of mine. just because I can then focus on more damage if I've got the resistance in my blessings. If that makes sense. Because a lot of the unique gear that we have has no resistances, except for poison. So now that the gear is out of the way, again, if you want to just get into it, use Tongue of the Aberrant Seer and Thornslinger Belt, and you'll be well on your way to making a Thorns build. Get the Legacy of the Quiet Forest to start off at level 50. Get Tears of the Forest at level 28. This will keep you in Spriggan form, along with some passives, which we'll cover later. This will keep you in Spriggan form 100% of the time. Then you don't have to worry about it. You just have to keep casting your Thorns or your Vines as much as you can. Alright, next we'll take a look at our passives. Okay, now that we have our gear out of the way and an explanation on what Thorns is in Last Epoch, let's check out our Primalist passives. Honestly, this build works so well, you can take whatever you want. The only things that I do recommend taking is Natural Attunement and Hunter's Restoration. That is the only thing that I recommend. You can take Primal Strength if you want more health regen rate, or if you want more health and minion health, you can take Gift of the Wilderness. Do not take Harmony of Blades, because we are going to be using our Thorn Shell. We don't rely on minions, so I wouldn't rely on taking anything minion damage related. Your goal is just to get this up to 20. But take Natural Attunement for the 8 attunement. The Lightning and Cold resistance is a bonus. Take it for the 8 attunement. Because right off the bat, that gives us 64% more flat damage from our shield. Next thing you're going to do is you're going to unlock your Druid Mastery. And what we want to do is take Chitinous Plating. We want the armor. Plus 75 armor doesn't seem like a lot, but it's multiplicative when we cast Thorn Shield, so it does add up. Druidic Prowess is going to be second. Again, for attunement. We love attunement. Scale it up to 5 so that we can then unlock Blessed Springs. The reason we're taking this, and the only reason we're taking this, is to get to Blossoming Garden, to then be able to take Totemic Restoration. Because the whole point of a Thorns build is to get hit. And when we get hit, we take damage. The way to mitigate damage is for a chance of summoning a healing totem when we are hit, because it will heal us the damage that we have taken. After those, I suggest going with Focused Wrath, because that reduces our rage decay so that we are able to stay in Spriggan form longer without having to cast, eventually leading up to no rage decay out of combat. Now that has a caveat to it. It's if you don't cast anything within 4 seconds. Excuse me. Now once you fill up to here, don't worry about these two. These are very end game. We don't need them until I believe I was level 80, 79 when I started taking these two. This is going to be your next one before we move on in the tree. Why? Because again, we are getting hit. We want a chance to cast Thorn Shield on us, which increases our damage reflected when we are hit. So it just makes sense, and it adds base damage reflect to our build. So once all that is done, again, minus these two, this is huge. 10 attunement and 3% per 5 attunement of crit avoidance. So right now I have 52% crit avoidance just from this talent, or passive. So we definitely need to take 10 out of 10 out of this. That gives us another 80% because of our shield of flat damage. I've been playing around with this. This is really cool. Woodland beings take 4 because increased minion healing. Our Spriggans, which we'll get into in the skills section of this, actually put out a healing aura at all times, and this just increases it. We take 4 into that to lead us into Toxic Reach. We put 8 into Toxic Reach because when we summon vines, we get rage. Less time we have to spend casting vines is more time spent casting Thorn Shield. And this also grants poison chance and minion poison chance, which is what our vines do anyways. So at 8 points, it's a 36% chance to summon a vine on kill, and it's incredible. It actually procs a lot more than 36%. Now we go into the Shaman. Why? Simply because of attunement. We want to stack as much attunement as we possibly can, and one of their first ones is 8 attunement, which is great. Then you can take 2 into anything else. If you want health, you can take it. If you want cast speed with an active totem, take it. Armor with totems, you can take 2 into there. But we want to make sure we get over here to get 8 more attunement. Again, that might sound repetitive, but I also can't stress attunement enough. 8% per attunement point is huge. Because just between these two, it is 128% increase to your flat damage reflected, which is the one that avoids defense. Then, once all of that is complete, you're going to come back, you're going to put 1 into Claws of the Forest. Then you're going to max out Nightshade Fangs, which will bring you up to 89. And then you're going to max out Claws of the Forest, which will bring you up to 95. Excuse me. And then everything else is your choice. Me personally, I'm going to be going with 5 into Wind and Leaves, just for cast speed and movement speed, to be able to bring out Thorn Shield a lot faster. So again, just a quick recap. Attunement and the health restored every 3 seconds and the increased health is just a bonus. Then you can take whichever one you want just to fill up to 20 so that we can unlock our Druid. Again, we want all attunement that we can get. And this little guy right here, Totemic Restoration, is huge. Alright, next we'll be taking a look at our actual skills and where to go from there. Okay, we're on the skills. Now this might look a little messed up. The only 3 that you need are Etera Blessing, Spriggan Form, and Summon Spriggan. Those are the only 3 you need. I could get rid of these 2 and still be able to run Corrupted Monoliths. The very first one you're going to take is Etera's Blessing. Why? Because that is massive amounts of healing. And we have a chance to summon healing totems. This is the very first big node that you want to go for. Because whenever you directly cast Thorn Shield, you also cast Etera's Blessing on the same target, which is yourself. It does cost mana as Rage, but we are constantly gaining Rage when we cast Vines. So keep that in mind. So you're going to want to put 2 into here for less mana, and then you want to go directly to Rosebloom. This will keep us healed up as we journey through our monoliths and through the game. It's huge. Then you want to go into Improved Blessing 4 times. Then you want to go into Purge, because we don't want ailments and dots killing us. Because it'll eat through our armor, everything. Because we are constantly casting Thorn Shield, we are constantly casting Etera's Blessing. And with that, we're constantly cleansing ourselves since it has no cooldown. Then the reason you go into 4 is so that it heals half of its value, and then half of its value over 4 seconds, and then it heals for half of Etera's Blessing again. We're literally getting 1.5 times value out of a single spell. Then you want to spec into Ancestral Renewal. Why? Because since we are always casting Thorn Shield, we're always going to be high health. And with high health, we summon healing totems 100% of the time. So we'll always have 2 of them up. Those act as backup heals, constantly healing us. Then the choice is yours. I went with Elemental Resistances because it's resistance, and everything is good resistance-wise. You need it in the higher levels of corruption. And then I finished off with Mana Efficiency 5 out of 5 into this. Just because I don't like spending more rage than I have to. Ignore Tornado. This is a little experiment that I'm doing. Spriggan Form is going to be your next one that you take. Now, you're going to... This one has been very specific. I've tried different things. Nothing else has worked in it. So follow along here. You want 1 into here, into Iron Bark. 3 into Deep Roots. We want the shield duration to be as long as we can so we can stack more, thus gaining more thorns. Then we go 5 out of 5 into Briar Shell. Again, this just gives us flat damage reflected. 4 to 5 because it gives us more armor with our shield and increases the armor with our shield. This is a must-have. Thorn Shield can only target you. If one of your minions gets in the way, you don't want to heal them and then die from being hit. So you want to only be able to cast it on yourself. Seems selfish, but trust me. With 12 vines out, 2 healing totems out, and 2 Spriggans out, it is hard to cast it on yourself. And then we have this neat little one. 30% chance for Thorn Shield to recast itself when it expires. Again, we are getting we're casting Thorn Shield, we're getting Thorn Shields when we're hit, and when it expires, it has a 30% chance to cast it on yourself again. So take 3 out of 3 out of that. Back over here, we take 2 more into Ironbark to unlock Leaf Barrier. This doesn't really matter as much because we stay in Spriggan form, but we need to take it to be able to summon a second Spriggan. Now, when we do spec into summon Spriggan, the reason we take a second one, and this does not work, I have tried this. When you control a Spriggan, you and your Spriggans reflect flat damage to attackers per point of vitality. It doubles up. So with 2 Spriggans, we're getting 36 damage reflected per vitality. Now again, I've tried vitality. I don't know if it just doesn't show in the numbers or what, but I've tried stacking vitality and it does not work. I have put in a bug. I just haven't gotten a response back from the ticket. So you're going to beeline it for there. 2 into here, 1 into here, 3 into here. The next route that I would go is Aura of Life. I would take 1 into there, and then 4 into the Healing Aura. Aura of Loyalty. It heals your minions like crazy. My Spriggans almost never die between this, their own Healing Aura, and the healing totems that I spend. This, the Rejuvenating Wind, is their on proc, which you can see. Oops. Rejuvenating Wind. If for some reason you come out of Spriggan form, hit this. Because our cooldown is 5 seconds. Hitting one of those heals you tremendously. And then maybe cast a couple of Terra's Blessings until you can get back into Spriggan form. And then I thought, you know what? More vines. Why not? That equals more poison damage, more rage regen. So I went with the vines route. 1 into here so they can cast summon vines. They can cast up to 6 of them. They deal more damage. Shorter cooldown. They summon 3 at a time. Now, if you wanted to go into Ensnaring Roots, by all means, go into Ensnaring Roots. If you just want them to do more thorn volley damage, then by all means go into that. There's no strict thing that you need to take. I went with Thorns just for rage regen. Excuse me. Now those are the only 3 you need to take. That's it. Now this is a little bonus. I went into Maelstrom because you can get a stack of Maelstrom. It's just extra physical damage, the way I went for it. Nothing else works with Thorns. Now, I'm sure you could put an extra point into Roar of the Woodland to go into Werebear form, and then spec into Bear to be able to go back into Spriggan form. But that's too many buttons. I'm not a guy that likes to press too many buttons when I'm playing a Thorns build. I just want stuff to hit me and die. That's what I want. So just adding damage anywhere you can is nice. So I went with Maelstrom. Why? Because it can stack on kill. We don't have to think about it. And Turbulence, for example, it deals more damage. Damage is doubled when you have at least 60 attunement. We're stacking attunement. Damage is just going to increase. If we hit 0, which is rarely, it summons Twisters that also deal physical damage. It's 10%. It rarely happens, but when it does, it's noticeable. And I went with Tornado because I was dumb. I'm going to be changing it out for probably something else. These are twisters, which I thought would scale with tornado. They do not. Tornado is something completely different, and there's no scaling modifier to twisters. So I'm going to be changing that out eventually. If I find something worth taking, I will definitely update the guide for that. It's not worth it to go into Summon Wolf for Frenzy because we already have 2 Spriggans out. We can't have a Wolf out. And nothing else procs, surprisingly, off of being hit. I figured Warcry would, but it doesn't. So there is the skills. So far we've gone over basic overview of what Thorns is. We have gone over the gear, the passives, the skills required, which are the 3. Eterra's Blessing, Summon Spriggan Form, and Summon Spriggans. Now, we are going to go over the rotation of this build. It is fairly simple. And I will show you going into a monolith. Now, the rotation is fairly simple. We'll start out in human form. So what we want to do, this is actually a really good example of what this build can do. First thing you want to do is you're going to want to summon your Spriggan, so that you have one of them out. We get our second one when we enter our Spriggan form. We get a second Spriggan. Now, if you get one that's like destroy both bone spires, cool. We can cast our vines as many times as needed so that we get our rage regen, and then we sit here and we hold our thorn shield. That is what we do. Echo conquered. So for any spires, you can stand in one spot, hold your thorn shield, and beat the echo, which I just did. Now, obviously mobs are different. So with a traversal skill that we now have through vines, because of our Sylvaphorond, we cast them into battle, and we hold our thorn shield. As you can see, stuff will hit you, and they will die. That is it for this build. As you can see, I am constantly refreshing the healing totems. Vines are being cast. I run out, boom. There's 6 more. You see, now we are doing whatever damage they're doing to us plus 148%. And as we stack our thorn shield, we are up to 25,000, 28,000. A lot of times I've seen we'll get up to 30,000 extra damage back. So I mean, realistically, you're gonna on average hit anywhere from 25 to 30,000 per hit on just your damage to attackers, not including the damage that they do to you, which is pretty powerful for only hitting one button and standing there. Next, we'll actually... Ooh, hybrid health. I'll take that. Next, we'll go over leveling. It is very, very easy. Leveling, do what you want until level 20, and you take your Druid passive. If you get a piece of gear that has Tempest Strike on it, or anything that enhances Tempest Strike, run with Tempest Strike. Swipe, deal with Swipe. You're going to be able to do whatever you want to level with up until level 20, and you take the Druid form. Then you can apply this guide. Then I would suggest, again, in order, you want the tongue, keep the belt on until you find this belt, or buy this belt if you're part of the MG. Next is the Tears of the Forest and Silverfrond. You're going to want those. Hazelroot's nice, because once you get your Spriggan form, this has a nice chance to cast Thorn Shield when you use your physical skill, Thorn Shield. Level 52 is where this build fully takes off. Level up to 52 and slam this on, and by the time you're 52 with all your attunement, it's going to be a walk in the park. I came into regular monos at level 27 and was killing 58s. That is how powerful Thorns is, and as I build upon it and find out more information, I believe, and start slamming gear. I just don't have any actual gear with potential except for my belt. So as I get more high potential, I will update this guide as we go further. As you've seen, a 100 corruption is like a hot knife through butter. Now, if you guys want to see any other builds, make sure to comment down below, hit the subscribe button, hit the thumbs up, and since I am a theory crafter, we could probably make any build work, if it makes sense. So make sure to hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and leave a comment down below if there's any other type of build that you want to see. The next build guide that I personally have coming out will be a teleport Nova build. Random teleport Nova build using the wrong warp wand. Alright, thanks for tuning in, everybody. I appreciate you. I love you. Have a good one.